Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the webcast, Succession Planning and the Development of Your High Potentials, sponsored by BizLibrary. Before we begin, I would like to remind you that this webcast has been pre-approved for HRCI credit and may also be used for SHRM credit as well as World at Work certification. You will receive an email from hr.com within 2 business days that will include the certification credit information. You can also log into hr.com and go to your View My Credits page where you can find all the credits you have received. If you have any questions today for our presenters or for hr.com, please type them into the Questions tab on your GoToWebinar control panel and we will follow up with you. Now, it is my pleasure to turn the floor over today to our presenters, Krista Brubaker and Libby Powers.
Thanks so much, Sherry, and thank you to all of you for joining us today for Succession Planning and the Development of Your High Potentials. My name is Krista Brubaker. I'm a Content Marketing Specialist with BizLibrary, and presenting with us today is Libby Powers. As a client, as a client success consultant with BizLibrary, Libby helps to build and sustain meaningful client relationships, ensuring success of clients with their learning and development needs. Armed with knowledge of best practices and industry trends, she works strategically with all levels of organizations to gain optimal results with BizLibrary solutions. Prior to her work at BizLibrary, Libby worked as an account executive, operations director, and a teacher. So a little bit about BizLibrary. We're a leading provider of online learning for growing organizations. Our award-winning microlearning video library engages employees of all levels, and our learning technology platform is a progressive catalyst for achievement. Partnered with our expert client success and technical support teams, clients are empowered to solve business challenges and impact change within their organizations. To learn more, feel free to visit us at bizlibrary.com. So that's enough about us. I'd like to go ahead and get things started here. So Libby, if you're ready to go, we're ready when you are.
I'm ready. So thank you all. I'm really excited to be presenting this material to you today. I'm hoping that it's going to be engaging and there's going to be lots of questions asked at the end. So I actually wanted to start this kind of off with a statistic. Did you know that on average 10,000 baby boomers retire every day from the workforce? That's huge. You know, baby boomers are people who have been at companies for 20, 30, 40 years or more, working themselves up the ranks to gain top leadership positions. They have a lot of business knowledge, a lot of understanding of the company they work for, and they have a lot of tribal knowledge, which is kind of unwritten information that others in the company do not commonly know. So as they leave the workforce in record pace, we need to take a proactive approach to prepare the next generation of leaders. So I'm going to ask you this. What is your most pressing concern about your next generation of leaders? Take a minute, think about that. You know, you can answer it in the poll question. So I want you all to think about succession planning as an exercise, as exercising. If I surveyed each one of you and asked if regular exercise is important, even if you don't do it, you would probably say yes. The research is clear. Exercising will help secure long-term health and wellness. It'll reduce current health risks, and it'll even make you feel better physically and emotionally. Well, the research is clear on the benefits of succession planning as well, from reduced time to fill critical positions, better decision-making about who to promote, and an enhanced competitive advantage. So for the webinar that we are conducting today, we hope that you have 3 key takeaways. Best practices in succession planning and high potential development programs. 2, a practical model for selecting participants for a succession planning or high potential development program. And 3, a model to determine the development targets and competencies for your program. You know, remember, when managed well, succession planning is a cost-effective motivational process. It helps organizations ensure they have the right leaders in the right places at the right time. So what keeps HR leaders up at night? You can look at the screen, and there's this survey result on the screen, I believe from an article done in 2015. You can see that the number 1 is talent management and retention, but number 2 is succession planning, and it's not a far second behind talent management. You know, the author who wrote this article, it's a great article, but when you're reading through the article, it doesn't really offer any solutions. So that's what we're going to be discussing today, is those solutions. Talent management and retention is the top of this list. But what we're going to be focusing on is that succession planning. Currently, I work as a consultant, and I have about 80 different clients that I work with. And I can tell you more than half of them state that succession planning is a key concern of the organization. While it is a key concern of the organization, they just don't know where to go. They don't know how to start this succession planning process, and it's a huge concern. Many people are getting ready to leave these high positions, high-level leadership positions, and they really need to have a plan in place. So what does that look like? If highly skilled employees are so valuable and so hard to find, doesn't it make sense to train as many of them in-house as possible? After all, you don't have to recruit current employees. If you've hired well, for things like character, capacity to learn and grow, and attitude, then your current employees ought to be the single best, most cost-effective source for highly skilled, sought-after skills that you're looking for. The trick is you have to want to invest in the actual training and development of them. The succession planning, the importance of managers, frontline managers in particular, cannot be overstated. Once again, this is an area where organizations face the choice of developing homegrown talent or hiring from outside. So truthfully, a blend of both approaches probably makes the most strategic sense, but developing internal talent takes a commitment to the future. That means developing and deploying an employee development program that helps you find and promote the best available talent is just going to make your organization that much more successful. So this is a great quote to start today's session. It's not just succession to the top. It's getting the right person in place for every job. Some of tomorrow's key jobs may not even exist today. So there's two key points that I really want to take out of this quote. One, it's about your people being successful. We want the right people in the right role. Two, it's also about forward-looking. Key jobs may not even exist today. At Biz Library, long ago when we started out as a lending library. Literally, we would mail DVDs to companies that needed compliance training, and over the 20 years it has evolved. And so we've kind of evolved into this SaaS company where we provide learning and development solutions online. The position that I am in today was not even in existence at Biz Library 5 years ago. So you actually may be in a role that wasn't in existence even 5 years ago. So we want to make sure we're empowering people to flourish and do well in, older roles, newer roles, or working towards the next role. So this is a great little, speaking of job titles that didn't exist a few years ago, this is a fascinating chart that LinkedIn created, and it has some fun data from all over the place that outlines careers that weren't just a glimmer in the eyes of an organization yesteryear. Things like social media intern, data scientist, cloud service specialist, big data architect, Zumba instructor. I had no idea how many people aspire to be a Zumba instructor, but wow, that's really increased in the past few years. I want you to take a minute and think. How many of you can think of positions currently at your organization that didn't exist last year or 3 years ago or 5 years ago? It's something that's always going to be evolving, and it's something that we need to keep working towards. So, some critical trends we see for succession planning. The business case. We want to start with a foundational question. Do we even need to have a succession planning program? Well, the short answer is yes. Every organization needs a succession planning process. The more challenging question is, how do we do it effectively? This question is very difficult because the answer will vary so much depending on your organization, your industry, the size, your leadership. But we believe there are some core principles that every organization can adopt that, if applied, can guide you towards some best practices. We want a program that can deliver true bottom line results. So let's start with a brief discussion of the challenges we see in the market that help drive us towards implementing an actual succession planning process. First of all, there's demographics. Your workforce is changing. Face it, it's true. Boomers are leaving for retirement. Gen Y is entering, and the economic recovery is creating an uptick in voluntary turnover. So we have to prepare our organizations for a talent drain at mid and upper management, and we have to do so quickly and effectively. What about economics in the organization? Over the last economic downturn, we saw a huge portion of middle management positions being cut as organizations slashed payroll in response to a failing economy. The result was that organization restructured around flatter management structures with fewer employees being asked to do more things and increase productivity. So we need to prepare the next generation of leaders for a different type of management world given these economic and structural realities. We also want to consider emerging competencies, which leads to this trend. Given the fact that organizations tend to look and function different than 5 to 10 years ago, we need management teams with new and different sets of skills and competencies. So when you add on the demographic shift, we can make an even more compelling case for the development of a different set of forward or future-looking competencies to take our organizations forward. Now, let's add one more layer to this. In this economic environment, do you have leaders with the skills and competencies needed to be competitive? What about reduced loyalty? So it's unfortunate, but organizations in every economic sector cut payroll, lay off workers, and froze salaries and benefits. That simple fact of the matter is that for many employees, the best chances for a sizable raise in this environment is no longer with their current company. They are literally going out and finding other positions where they can actually, get those raises. And so we're seeing an increase in the voluntary turnover rate as key and valued employees are now taking advantage on improving job markets today. So by having an effective succession planning program in place, we can have a steady supply of talent ready or close to ready to set up and fill important roles and help our organization meet these challenges. So succession planning and the bottom line. Even for small organizations, proactively managing the inventory of skills and knowledge can provide large returns. Well-managed succession planning is cost-effective, motivational process. It helps organizations ensure they have the right leaders in place at the right times. This is a tongue twister. Successful succession planning processes directly impact the bottom line by doing a few things. They're aligned with the organization's strategic plan. They're designed around current and future capability requirements. They're focused on competency, skills, and values as well as past performances. They're perceived as relevant and real by the people that participate in them, and they're used to drive promotions and development. At the end of the day, who doesn't want to be developed and promoted within their organization? So, if you're familiar with the term Swoot Analysis, this is a great tool that can function in two ways. First of all, as an icebreaker to get conversations started, or in a more sophisticated way for strategy development. So in a SWOT analysis, we measure our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So strengths. What are the internal strengths of an organization based upon things that the organization does really well? What's the organization's core competencies? Weaknesses. Internal improvements needed to be successful or things to avoid. We look at opportunities, improved results by leveraging strengths or eliminating weaknesses, and then threats. What are those obstacles to success? External factors such as competitors or broad market changes, external or internal, maybe market drive or competition, maybe it's the lack of talent or not the right talent. So here are some questions you really need to ask in each category to get what you want out of this assessment. As far as strengths go, what do we do well today? And can we take those strengths forward? Will our current strengths prepare us for future success? Weaknesses. What do we do poorly and why? Can we do less of this? If not, why? And what steps must we take to either improve or minimize the risk? Also, opportunities. What are our greatest opportunities for growth? And are our strengths aligned to take advantage of them? Or do the weaknesses stand in the way? Threats. Where are we vulnerable? Our biggest threats, external or internal? Market drive or competition? Lack of talent or not the right talent? So there's definitely a few ways to look at this, a few ways to evaluate this, and a few ways to analyze our current situation. So alignment. We spent a lot of time talking about linking succession planning efforts to organizational goals. Here are 3 examples of strategic goals that might be identified for your succession planning program. Organizational agility. So increasing the quantity of ready now leaders. We are not advocating that this be the only strategic goal of your plan, but this can be very effective byproduct of a well-designed and well-executed program. In fact, we would sincerely hope that effective programs would help you identify individuals within your organization who are ready to assume more complex roles. But this objective cannot and should not be the overriding strategic goal of the program. Another example of the strategic goal is to improve retention rate of high potential employees. As we mentioned earlier, young people entering the workforce today have a different expectation than those of previous generations. They routinely expect opportunities to grow and develop professionally. Effective succession planning programs can prove and outline for you to meet any of these expectations on part of your younger high potential employees. I actually read an article not too long ago about millennials entering the workforce, and there was a couple statistics in there, but one of the statistics is that millennials are looking for learning and development programs, and they expect to have some sort of upward movement in the first year and a half of being employed at their new employer. A year and a half. So if you think about that, you know, they really want to start moving up in the company pretty quickly. Additionally, millennials are not necessarily looking for companies with the best pay or the best benefits. They're looking for companies where there is going to be that forward movement. So just take that into consideration. We also want to think about opportunities and threats. So where are greatest opportunities for, or what are the greatest opportunities for growth? Are the strengths aligned to take advantage of them? And do our weaknesses stand in the way? Threats. Where are we vulnerable? Are our biggest threats external? Are they external or internal? Are our leadership team really pushing us down for having these growth opportunities? Are the threats market-driven, or are they competition? Or are they lack of internal talent or not the right talent at all? So having these opportunities and threats outlined is going to be really important when you're putting together your succession plan. Next, so deciding who to groom. So this is a great question. You know, you can have people that have been working maybe at a line level employee for 2 or 3 years, 4 years, and they do great at their job. And so the only next thing with them would be to move into a supervisor or management position. Well, that may not be the best thing because they don't have the skills or tools to be a good manager, nor maybe do they really want to be a manager. So we need to decide who to groom. So executives look at things like performance, strengths based on our leadership competencies, and the desire of the individuals. Do they even want to advance? Do they want to remain in the same role? Not everyone who meets the criteria is ready for advancement. Some individuals have competing priorities, such as family, school, you know, etc., which needs to be taken into account when determining their professional or their potential timing for future growth. There's a saying that not every B player wants to be an A player, and it's really important to have B players within your organization, but to also recognize who our A players are and how we can take them to the next level. So you need to first decide who you're going to groom. Also, what capabilities do they have? So there are 3 excellent methods that when blended together can provide an excellent pool of potential future leaders. So first, we want to talk about self-selection. Ask for volunteers for a leadership development program. Find out who really wants to be part of leadership development. If people do not want to participate, probably shouldn't force it on them. Also, some people might raise their hand to participate you've overlooked. You may think that they have no desire to actually be a part of the program. So in either event, it's a good idea to start the selection process with some self-selection. Let people, you know, ask you or let you know if they're ready or not. Next, talk about assessment. So within your organization, who within your organization fits the profile of future leader that you've established? You know, probably having some key competencies written down of what you expect future leaders to look like, and are these individuals meeting those key competencies? And last, don't overlook observation. Who within your organization has demonstrated through past behaviors the ability to lead? Remember, not everybody has to be a leader or a manager to have leadership skills, to show leadership skills. You know, are they going out to different departments and, you know, getting resources from other departments? Are they learning about other people? Are they mentoring? Are they coaching? You know, so having these leadership skills is also really important too. People who are learning Agile usually exhibit the following 6 characteristics according to a recent white paper titled Learning About Learning Agility from the Center for Creative Leadership and Columbia University's Teachers College. So they're unafraid to challenge the status quo. They remain calm in the face of difficulty. They take time to reflect on their experiences. They purposely put themselves in challenging situations, and they're open to learning, and they resist the temptation to become defensive in the face of adversity. I love that last one. They resist the temptation to become defensive in the face of adversity, because you definitely don't want to have a defensive leader. Learning agility has 5 key elements, says Swisher. So self-awareness, mental agility, people agility, change agility, and results agility. So do they mentally have the capacity to be agile, change their mindset based on what's going on within the company? Do they have the agility to work with different people, different levels within the organization? Change agility. I mean, in the world today, change is happening quick and it's happening every day. You probably can't get through a week or a month without something major that's changing within your organization. So you have to be open to change. And then results, you know, the ability to see results happening. If the results aren't happening, then what do we need to do to change that? So as the author writes, there are individuals who are continually able to give up skills, perspectives, and ideas that are no longer relevant. They learn new ones that are relevant. HR leaders who want their organizations to thrive in the future, they note, must focus on finding and developing these individuals. Oh, I'm sorry. So potential. Understanding of current and future trends for organization and industry. So here's a few suggestions for using competency models and maps in the process to find the potential. First, it's important that your competency model and mapping are not too complex. The competencies for success need to be clear, easy to communicate, and easy to understand across a broad range in your organization. The competency model you use should be rooted in verifiable success criteria that are aimed at predicting future successes within your organization. So in other words, if you have an individual who currently functions as a supervisor and you're assessing that individual around competency models for the same role, you're not developing information that will be predictive of future success. So you need to apply 3 to 4 key competencies that this person needs to develop, then identify applied competencies that they have already excelled at. Then you want to actually benchmark the top performers. You want to figure out who does success look like. Then figure out what do your top performers do to be the top performers. Are they curious? Are they insightful? Are they engaged? Are they determined? So we want to look at performance to potential. So if we look at low performance and high potential, maybe there could be a lack of training there. There could be a lack of interest and motivation. Unaligned career goals, maybe coaching needed. So if they're low performing but a high potential, we need to do some things that could make them high potential, high performing. If they're high performance and high potential, well, excellent match between skills and motivation. Maybe there's areas of strength, areas to develop. Career focus, what do they want for their career? And then we talk about low performance and low potential. Maybe it's a mismatch for the employee. Maybe that's a career that they shouldn't be in. Development and coaching will not improve performance in this area, so those are people that we probably don't necessarily want to have a succession planning or high potential planning process for. Or what if we have high performance and low potential? This could be 2 things. Assessment of potential could be wrong. Motivation to succeed, overcoming lack of skill and training, or area to develop and build. Maybe we can turn that into a strength. So we definitely want to outweigh the advantages, disadvantages, and the performance and potential. Relevancy. We also want to make sure it's relevant. So clearly defined standards, requirements, and competencies. We want to link them to the organization's mission, vision, and strategy. Anytime that we can align any training to the organization's mission, vision, and strategy, it's going to make the training program stronger, and it's going to make the organization stronger. We want to communicate the link clearly to participants, and we want to link the program to business results. We always want to have some sort of return on expectation from the training that we do. So managers need to stretch, challenge, and coach their high potential employees. Without multi-dimensional dialogue about these issues, managers tend to hold on to their high potential people instead of helping them get along on a pathway to internal development up the organizational chart. And high potentials, they may interpret this as a lack of company support and will be inclined to look elsewhere. So we don't want to just hang on to these high potentials and keep them in our back pocket for a rainy day. You know, they're doing great in the department now, and so the department is excelling and all this stuff. But those high potentials want to move up. And so if they're not given the opportunity to move up, you risk them leaving the company, and we don't want that because they're really top performers. So, you know, we also want to keep developing them. So learning how to learn. So a new manager's relationship with his boss can be an important source of learning. It shouldn't be the only source he taps into. His boss, in fact, has a responsibility to help him cultivate other sources and take charge of his own development. For instance, the boss should encourage him to build a range of developmental relationships with current and previous peers, former bosses, individuals outside of the company who can serve as mentors, coaches, and sources of emotional support. And remember that formal training can play an important role. It provides managers with insight into the company's culture and establishes processes as well as opportunities to receive systematic feedback on their performance. Equally important, training enables new managers to forge developmental relationships with peer managers who are also attending the session, says Linda A. Hill. Making these connections can be the first step to cultivating a network of influence within the company. So you can help people learn how to teach themselves to lead and manage. You do this by providing them with some of the tools that they need to capitalize on their on-the-job experience. For instance, frameworks that attune them to key issues and situation. We have all kinds of experience from which we learn nothing, or from which we learn the wrong lessons, because we don't know how to make sense of those experiences. You can also help people be more self-aware. For managers to figure out the implications of their style or a given situation, they need feedback, not simply about what they've done, but also about how they've done it. To the extent that you can provide people with this kind of feedback, you can help them figure out cause and effect relationship as well. You help make the link between their intent and their actual impact. From this, they learn how to be more strategic about their day-to-day activities, modulating their behaviors to produce the desired outcome. Moreover, they learn to be more strategic about their careers, choosing the work experiences most likely to bring about the growth and development they'd like to achieve. And then along with developing their introspection skills, you can help people learn to act in ways that others want to give them feedback, sending them signals that they're willing to hear what others have to say, and will get managers the information they need to make an on-the-job corrections. So managers are relatively open to feedback and don't come defensive, find that others who will want to mentor and coach them. So again, developing relationships, formal training, receiving feedback, self-awareness, and on-the-job experiences. Developing leaders at all levels. There's many levels of leadership inside an organization. So your program should not only educate current and future executives, they should also serve to emphasize the importance of both strategic and operational leadership and inspire executives to pass down key information about the essential qualities of leadership throughout the organization. To accomplish all these objectives, you should create separate but integrated programs that are specifically geared for people at different levels within the organization and cover the following content. So, high potential employees and entry-level managers. What management means to the company, essential communication strategies for managers. At mid-level managers, we want operational aspects to management, including how to interview and hire, set clear objectives, coach for success, and evaluate performance. For senior managers being groomed for executive roles, we want them to, be overachieving knowledge and skills associated with a higher level leadership, including how to address company needs, issues, and culture. And for senior directors and C-level executives, we want opportunities to cross-pollinate ideas and receive different perspectives. So there are definitely different phases to succession planning. Your program should not only educate current and future executives, they should also serve to emphasize the importance of both strategic and operational leadership and inspire executives to pass down key information about the essential qualities of leadership through the organization. Again, that tribal knowledge. People only know, these people that have been in these senior leadership levels for a long time, they have tribal knowledge, and it's not necessarily information that everybody in the company has, so they need to be able to pass that information down. So to accomplish all these objectives, you should create separate but integrated programs that are specifically geared for people at different levels within the organization and cover the following content. So high potential employees and entry-level managers. What management means to the company. They need to know what management means to the company. They need to have essential communication strategies for managers. If we talk about mid-level managers, we talk about operational aspects to management, including how to interview and hire and set clear objectives. So there's definitely done in phases. We want to first consideration, are they ready for this high potential program or the succession planning program? Exploration of what that looks like, transitioning them into this training process, and then actual adoption of those skills that they've learned. So here's a helpful diagram illustrating the basic elements of one succession planning program. So this would be a succession planning for new managers, and there's a few different aspects to it. And this is kind of like consideration, exploration, transition and adoption, how it actually looks. So there's two broad phases, the pre-promotion and the post-promotion. So the pre-promotion is consideration and exploration, and then the post-promotion is transition and adoption. So in that pre-promotion phase, there's, maybe seminars, informational interviews, job shadowing, focus groups. And then there's exploration. So we talk about formal and informal training, acting manager, job rotation, and project manager. And then as they hone in on those skills, we talk about post-promotion. So we have formal and informal training, mentoring, networking, and then adoption. Still formal and informal training, mentoring, feedback, and peer evaluation. So, the training never stops. We blend a formal and informal learning, lots of opportunities to apply what is learned along the way. And we have this 70-20-10 rule. About 70% of organizational learning takes place on the job. 70% takes place on the job. So through problem solving and through special assignments and other day-to-day activities. Another 20% occurs through drawing on the knowledge of others in the workplace from informal learning, coaching, mentoring, support, direction from managers and colleagues. Maybe you're overhearing conversations, stuff like that. Only 10% actually occurs through a formal learning process, whether that's classroom, workshop, or more recently, e-learning. So tapping into that 20 and maybe even dipping into that 70 can be very beneficial. On-the-job learning is very important when you're talking about a successful succession process. Creating an individual development plan. So often, the sort of activity is done in a rather ad hoc way when you get the chance, sort of, but this tends to mean nothing and actually gets done. So by bringing structure to development, it means that there's clarity about what's expected and what has to happen to achieve those expectations. Both the manager and the individual know the plan. You've identified what support and resources are needed. The individual owns their own development and is proactive. Use a development plan, IDP, to your structure, your conversation, and developmental activity. You want to identify their development objectives. So prioritize no more than 3. Those objectives that will really help to accelerate their performance, address the key development areas, and stretch their strengths. You want to identify what activities need to happen in order to achieve those objectives. So perhaps shadowing or e-learning or a mentor or a coach would be good. Also identifying the resources that are needed. It may be finding or it may be funding or training or a coach or somebody already in the business who can help. Identify what measures you'll use to evaluate the performance. What key performance indicators will effectively measure how well they're doing. Is it a reduction in customer complaints? Is it an increase in sales achieved by the team? You'll want to have an actual measure. We want to talk about milestones and have target dates. Set deadlines to keep both of you focused on what needs to happen and when. Schedule in your review. So plan to get together regularly to discuss progress. Typically about every 3 months would be good, but this should be in addition to monthly checkups. We want to have development objectives. Are objectives that you have identified to enable you meet the learning and development needs identified at the skills analysis stage? We also want to have activities. The activities can constitute any learning and development activity that will enable you to achieve your development objectives, i.e., let's talk about formal training, on-the-job training, work shadowing with another colleague, etc. Also, support and resources. So describe what you need to help you achieve your development objectives. Typically, you would need involved support from your manager, department, or colleague to enable you to understand a learning and development activity, such as allowing you time away from your role or funding. Let's say, maybe you're going into an outside seminar, that costs money and it's going to take you away from the day-to-day job that you do. And then measure of success. This is a hard one. Success is a hard thing to measure, especially when you're talking about a learning and development program. But all the performance indicators or outcomes which show the developmental actions have taken place and an impact is seen. You have an employee who's going through this process, and are they actually implementing things that they've learned? Are they changing their work style? Are they, learning their new skills and teaching others these new skills? So we want to definitely have a measure of success. So we have a few key takeaways from this webinar. One, like I've said 3 or 4 times so far during this webinar, when well-managed, succession planning is cost-effective. It's a motivational process that helps organizations ensure they have the right leaders in the right place at the right time. 2, a practical model can help you use for selecting participants for a succession planning or high development programs. And then 3, a method for determining key competencies and development plans for your high potential employees. So everyone go ahead and keep sending those questions over. Oh, Chris, I think you take this over at this point.
Yeah, thanks, Libby. If you just want to advance to that question slide for us. So Libby shared so much great information in this, and we just want to make sure that you're able to take away as much as possible. So if you haven't had a chance yet, make sure to check out that handout section on the panel to download the slides. And if you have any questions for Libby, we are going to get to some Q&A in just a moment. So if you open the questions box in that panel, go ahead and send over your questions through there. I will be watching out for those. And right before we get to the Q&A, we're going to share some recommended resources from the Biz Library collection. So Libby, if you want to advance to that first one. Our first resource is the Succession Planning video course. And this video course discusses the issues and successes that come with succession planning in a private business. It covers why some businesses fail and the importance of picking the right successor. Succession planning doesn't happen by itself. It takes a formal process, which is what you'll learn more about in this video course. And this course is available in the Biz Library collection. And the second resource that we have is the 3-part video course on conducting a formal mentoring program. So mentoring programs are an important tool in the battle to retain valuable skills and experience as your organization grows and changes. Instead of hoping that this transfer of knowledge from experienced employees to newer ones is happening naturally, consider setting up a formal initiative through the strategies outlined in this video course. And again, that one is conducting a formal mentoring program. And both of these are available in the Biz Library collection. And you can try out these video lessons and courses by scheduling a demo with Biz Library. Just visit us at bizlibrary.com/demo to let us know that you're interested. So Libby, if you want to throw up that demo slide there so they can see where to go. And I've been collecting some questions here. Anyone, if you have questions, again, send them over through that questions box, and we'll see how many we can get to for the Q&A. So Libby, are you ready to go for some questions?
I'm ready.
All right, sounds good. The first one I have here is, how do you convince the current leaders to be willing to look past flaws of current employees? Too often, I feel that the attitude is that they see current employees are not perfect and that the better candidate will always be from the outside, but they may forget or don't realize that they have flaws themselves. So do you have any advice for how to get your current leaders to kind of accept developing employees instead of just seeing the flaws that they may have right now?
Yes, I think that's a great question. Everybody has flaws. There's things that I do every day that probably annoy my coworkers. There's probably things that my managers and senior level managers do every day that annoy each of their colleagues and stuff like that. But when we're coming down to business, we need to take out, I guess, the individual's flaws and really focus on how they can be a better employee. They're already an employee with your organization, and so when you're starting to, go onto the workforce and you have to, look for other key talent and go through the hiring process and, advertising and interviews and, the onboarding and stuff like that, that's a big cost to take on. Other than just coaching or training your current employees to be better employees, I think it's really important, because when we take the time to coach our employees, our current employees, and train those current employees to be better employees, then there's going to be a better buy-in from those employees, and they're going to help the organization reach the next goal.
Great, thanks. So another one we've got here is, how important is it to get feedback from the line manager or the frontline manager in the process of creating that individual development plan that you talked about?
That's huge. So one thing that I actually talk with my clients about, I typically only work with a program manager. A lot of times the program manager that I work with is either an HR generalist or, you know, in some form of HR. Sometimes they're in learning development. Sometimes they're the safety person. It varies. But that program manager that I talk to, they don't know the ins and outs of every employee. They can't. It's just not something that's achievable. So I stress to them the importance. You need to go out and talk to your managers and find out where are the areas that we need to improve in. Where are we doing really good, but where can we do better? And develop your programs around that. I also think it's really important actually to ask your individual contributors where they feel that the entire department or the group is lacking, because what a manager's view of where the strengths and weaknesses are not necessarily the view of those individual contributors. And so I think having as much information as far as where the development opportunities lie is going to be really important when you create any program, not just succession planning.
Yes, that is very true. Definitely getting their feedback for the whole department, I think, is really important. Here's another one for you. This one is, if our leaders aren't planning to retire anytime soon, how do you suggest that we convince them that it's important to start with succession planning now and not kind of wait for years to come?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, there's two sides to that I think. One is maybe kind of a grim side, but let me ask you this. Every day is not a given. Something catastrophic can happen. You know, you cannot plan for a disaster. What if, you know, what if tomorrow somebody in that senior leadership team wasn't available to be in that senior leadership team anymore? Maybe if there's an accident or a sickness or something like that. So tomorrow is not a given. So it's really important to have a plan in place if something like that happens. Also, it benefits the business now. It's, you know, we use succession planning and this kind of things because it is used to, we're building our strong leaders within the organization now. It helps the business survive during challenges in the marketplace. It helps the business survive with employee engagement. If you have strong leaders within your organization, your employees are more likely to be engaged. It's going to be a reduction in turnover. You know, so there's a lot of benefits to developing your leaders. It's not just because, oh, well, the CEO is going to retire in 2 years and now we're scrambling to fill his shoes. We want to have, if there's people within your organization that want to be A players and they want to be promoted into those higher level positions, then developing them now and getting them ready for those higher level positions is going to help us currently as we, you know, go through the current structure of the organization.
Great. Yeah, it's definitely not just about waiting for things to happen. It's being prepared at any time. So here's another one. This one says, is succession planning best if you, as an individual contributor, approach management and ask to be groomed? She comments, oftentimes as women in the workforce, we don't get approached as often for opportunities to lead. So would you suggest people who are interested in being leaders to approach their leaders about succession planning or wait for them to be approached?
Absolutely. So let me, I guess, preface that with all of the leaders within your organization got to be leaders by doing something. And I guarantee you a lot of that time it was putting themselves out there and saying, hey, I have the potential to do this. I think I can do this. I want to do this. I'm determined. What do I need to do to groom myself to be in your position one day? Whether it's in your position at the company or another company, what do I need to do to be in a key leadership position? I personally, I am of the thought process of being very direct and open. I don't think we need to beat around the bush. If you are very interested in wanting to be groomed to be in that leadership position, then you need to take charge, because the first quality of a leader is being able to put themselves out there and, you know, say, I want this, and go for it. If you're not able to say, I want this, and go for it, whether you're a woman or not, then I would question you even wanting to be in a leadership position at all.
Yeah, I would agree. If you've come to that point where you realize, you know, you would like to be a leader, definitely making that known is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
the people who are ready to set up succession planning, you know, they might not be aware that that's what you want. So here's another one. This one's great. I'm really into personality assessments personally, so I think this one's interesting. It's, what would you say is the most important characteristic to look for in a future leader?
Oh, that's a good one.
I know there are a lot.
I think there's, yeah, I think there's a few characteristics, definitely. Something that I do believe that is really important in a leader is humility, acting like you're not above everybody else. I have some clients that I work with that are, I work with one client in particular. He's the VP of HR of a $500 billion organization. He talks to me every single month about his training program. So I respect him tremendously, because while he is the VP of HR of this, you know, $500 billion company, he's relatable. He makes himself relatable. And so having humility, I think, is huge. It's very important. You know, you want to be flexible. Business is changing, and you can't let that show on your face. If something's not going your way or you're having a bad day, you can't let everybody underneath you know that. So maybe, you know, being flexible and being approachable, also being open-minded and easy to talk to. You know, they always say that a manager doesn't manage. There's a saying about a manager doesn't manage, they lead, or something like that. There's all these characteristics that make a great leader, but, you know, having those key qualities like humility, flexibility, and open-mindedness, I think, are things that people don't necessarily talk about when talking about leadership skills.
Yeah, I would also agree that humility is a big one. I certainly look for that in the people that I'm working with. So along with that, we just had one come in as asking related to this question. So how important do you think emotional intelligence is as a characteristic for leaders?
I am a strong believer in emotional intelligence. I think that you can teach anybody a skill. You can teach somebody to be good at a job role because they have X, Y, and Z laid out, and this is what they need to be doing. But you can't teach, well, you can teach emotional intelligence. I think it's something that needs to be groomed over time and something that needs to be learned over time. But if anybody in your workplace or if your leadership team is lacking emotional intelligence, it's very evident, and people most likely don't want to work alongside with that person, don't want to communicate with that person, and stuff like that. And emotional intelligence can be, you know, measured in many different ways, but having emotional intelligence and the intelligence enough to know how others are is really going to help you in your career. Because let's face it, the job, the organization, the job outlook, the world is changing, and people's mindsets are very different. I was a teacher in the beginning of my career, and when I was a teacher in the beginning of my career, I worked with teachers who were teaching for 20, 30, 40, 50 years at the exact same school, the exact same classroom, and they did things their way, and what others thought of them didn't matter, and this and that. Well, it doesn't work like that anymore. The job market is different. People have opinions, and they are not afraid to share those opinions with you. And because of that, you need to understand how to be reactive and how to handle those opinions and how to handle yourself in those kind of situations.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree there too. I think we've seen statistics. I can't remember exactly where the source is, but it's the top skills that employers were looking for in 2010 versus what will be most important in 2020. And I think emotional intelligence wasn't even on the list in 2010, and then it was one of like the top 3 in 2020.
Yeah, I've seen that same.
Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely, it's getting to be really important. Okay, let's just do one more question here, and then we'll wrap things up for today. Thank you to everyone who sent these questions over. These are really great, and I hope that our answers to them are helpful and insightful. So we'll just do one last one. This one, do you have any suggestions for creative ways to get different generations to share their knowledge and learn from each other?
Definitely. So I have learned that people love talking about themselves, which is fine with me, because I really don't like talking about myself. I don't like being the center of attention. But I think there's ways to go about engaging people in conversation where they feel that they can open up. A lot of times when I'm talking to clients and they're having to talk to their senior leadership team and stuff like that about why, training is important, one of the biggest things that I tell them is you need to share the why and how long it will take. People don't have time for anything anymore. I mean, they are doing the job of 2, 3, 4 different people, and they're managing a household, and they've got this and that and this and that. So when you go into something and you have this expectation of why you're wanting the information, how it can help you, and how long it's going to take for them to share this information, I think it kind of takes down that barrier to, well, I don't have time for this initially. And then also, a lot of times when people have information that it's hard to get that information out of them, I think there's maybe an ego factor there. They don't feel like if they share that information, then it's maybe going to hurt them in some sort of way, or, I have this information and you don't, and I have this, special knowledge and only I can have it, and that kind of thing. So, maybe stroking people's ego, saying, you do this really well, and I feel like I'm lacking in that area. Can you help me improve myself in that area? I'd love to be well-versed in it like you someday, or something like that. So I think it depends on the person that you're speaking to. I definitely think sharing, why you're wanting the information, how it's going to help you, and how long it'll take to share that information is important. But also, if you can say, I really feel like you do this really well, and I think I can improve in that area, I think, the conversation is going to be more open and honest.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, fostering those relationships, I think, are really important, especially for succession planning, as we've talked about today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, thank you so much, Libby, for answering all of those questions. And thank you to you all for attending. We want to say thank you to HR.com for hosting us today also. And so I'm going to go ahead and pass things over to Sherry, and she's going to wrap us up for today.
Thanks, Krista. I want to thank you and Libby for such an informative webcast today. It's very much appreciated, so thank you both so much.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, just a few reminders for the attendees. If you would like to view this webcast again, the archive recording and slides will be available for up to 7 days for our free members and without restrictions for those with the certification membership. All webcast credits are stored in your HR.com account. Watch for your email from HR.com to arrive within 2 business days, and it will also contain the certification credit information. Your feedback is very important to both BizLibrary as well as HR.com, so please do take a couple of moments to fill out the exit survey that will open once the webcast has ended. This does conclude our webcast today. Again, everyone, thank you for joining us, and please enjoy the rest of your day.